Hey kids, this is Chef Jack with another edition of Marvel vs. DC. You all know the rules by now. Englentine and I have divided up every single comic book released by both DC and Marvel, and each week we review those new releases. We give each book a score of 1 to 5 stars, and at the end we average out the points, and the publisher with the best average score is the winner for that week. With all that said, let's get this party started. This time around, I'm reviewing Black Panther number 17, Black Panther and the Crew number 6, The Black Racer and Shiloh Norman Special number 1, Deadpool number 35, Guardians of the Galaxy The Telltale Series number 2, Infamous Iron Man number 11, Justice League of America number 11, The Mighty Captain Marvel number 8, Spider-Gwen number 23, Star Wars Mace Windu Jedi of the Republic number 1, Supergirl Annual number 1, Uncanny Avengers number 26, and X-Men Blue number 10. The 1-star books. These are the worst. Not merely bad, but awful and horrendous. Avoid them at all costs. Infamous Iron Man number 11. This is going to sound really weird, but the best way I can think to describe this issue is way too Bendis for words. I'm actually glad that after next month's issue number 12, I won't have to put up with reading and reviewing this piece of crap title anymore. Brian Michael Bendis has achieved precisely nothing with Infamous Iron Man, except to utterly mess up Victor Von Doom as a villain. This specific issue features a sudden plot twist that actually renders everything that has happened in the previous 10 issues moot. So at this point, I doubt anything they can do in the next issue will make any part of this worth reading. The Mighty Captain Marvel number 8. Englantine's already eviscerated this issue, so let me make this fast and bloody. The art's been recycled, strike 1. The dialogue's been recycled, strike 2. They are still just sitting on their asses, spinning their wheels, waiting for Secret Empire to be over. Strike 3, you're out. The characterization sucks, the pacing is crap, the only high point, quote-unquote, is the return of Quasar, just in time for them to kill Quasar off. So, you know, Pax Vobiscum Quasar, we hardly knew you. Wonder who the next Quasar is going to be. Star Wars Mace Windu number 1. Given that Mace Windu was one of the more memorable characters in the Star Wars prequels, I mean, you know, what do you expect, given that he was played by Samuel L. Jackson, and despite only showing up for, what, maybe 10-15 minutes in the entire trilogy? I actually expected this comic to reinforce the strong personality that was shown through his very brief appearances. I was looking for an interesting glimpse into the adventures that had made him such a mimetic badass. What I got instead was this story. Very disappointing. The book was sluggish, it was directionless, it was loaded down with exposition. The art was distracting. The story was meandering, it never seemed to go anywhere. There was very little to no consistency about any of it. With so many Star Wars comics now on the market, I suppose that it was only a matter of time before Marvel reached the 1-2 mini stage. I'm just sorry that it was this one. The 2-star books. These comics might be bad, but there's usually 1 or 2 things that save them from being truly horrible. Guardians of the Galaxy The Telltale Series number 2. This series continues to underwhelm, as it seems to actively not only ignore the actual comic books, but doesn't pay much attention to the movies it's supposedly based on either. The cartoonish art and the weird characterization just doesn't fit the story. That's not to say there aren't some clever moments. There is, for example, a joke about MMA fighting that I thought was absolutely hilarious. But overall, this issue just feels like it's sitting there, not doing much of anything. And the introduction of some of the background characters seems overly convenient and forced. So in the end, all I can say is that this is far from the best Guardians of the Galaxy story I have ever read. Justice League of America number 11. The biggest problem with this issue is that it's just as boring as the last issue. Seriously, from page 1 it jumps right in with excessive clunky exposition. All the characters are cardboard one note. The interpersonal conflict is contrived, and the storyline is underdeveloped. I wish I could say that this surprised me, but it really doesn't. I mean, let's face it. The microverse just isn't all that exciting. As I said in my last review, it's a generic fantasy setting with microverse aliens standing in for elves and dwarves. The entire thing is overwritten and it's repetitive. Even the art is generic. This isn't the worst issue of this series I've ever read, but it is far from the best, too. Uncanny Avengers number 26. So, all the character development that has happened since this series started is gone, it seems. Every member of the team, especially Rogue and the Scarlet Witch, are acting as if the Rick Remender run on this title never happened. In addition, the sudden and completely random appearance of Gravitron brings its own problems. I mean, not only is he amazingly overpowered, he's one of those mustache-twirling, snidely Whiplash types who are evil because of reasons. We never find out what his goal is, really. I feel like Jim Zub hit a point in the narrative where he just stopped and he realized he didn't have any more ideas, so he decided to use Chandler's Law. For those of you who don't know what Chandler's Law is, it's named after mystery writer Raymond Chandler, who said that he always used to break up writer's block by following one simple rule. When in doubt, have a guy come through the door with a gun in his hand. That way, it doesn't matter if it makes sense. The readers are concentrating on the action. The 3-star books. These comics are just average. They fall neither on the good end of the spectrum nor the bad. Black Panther and the Crew number 6. I'm disappointed. I gave the last issue a 5-star rating because it earned it. It was a great read. It was exciting, had no-nonsense storytelling, art that fit the story, wonderful pacing, none of the usual race-baiting bullshit. This issue has almost no substance. Everything that happens we knew would happen because of last issue. Literally, no surprises here. I was hoping for an impressive finale to the building story, especially, as I said, in light of the last issue's perfections. But nope, all we got is blandness. It was like a mayonnaise sandwich on Wonder Bread. It'll fill you up, sure, but why bother eating it? And even worse, there was no ending here. It just stops. It's sort of like the last episode of The Sopranos. There's no big finale, no closure, no satisfaction. It's just over. I wanted better. Spider-Gwen number 23. This issue is notable only for the fact that the title character is pretty much left out completely. Instead, it concentrates on this version of Mary Jane Watson and her band, cleverly named the Mary Janes. This is not necessarily a bad issue. There are some moments that are actually pretty well done, and the look into the friendship between the various members of the band actually seems realistic, and it's a fun part of the book. Not to mention it goes a long way to fleshing all these background characters out. On the other hand, there are some truly awful moments, like the completely unnecessary confrontation with the stereotypical guy who won't say no, so he has to be beaten up by the strong, independent woman. It seems to be shoehorned in there just to remind us about feminist girl power. You know, yay women, men suck, SJWs, ooh-rah. Lastly, the art is very uneven. The style does not match the story well. So in the end, while it isn't a bad issue, it's just not good enough to land anywhere else on this review. Supergirl Annual number 1. The fact that rather than telling a one-off story, this annual is the next part in the current Girl of No Tomorrow storyline was an interesting choice, I thought. We get to see a lot of the long simmering plots come to a head in this issue, in addition to the primary storyline. The general idea is really strong, and the action has weight here, but it feels like the editors were asleep on this one. I mean, I counted 5 different spots where the story needed to be tightened up because it had lost the narrative. The characterization was pretty much, all over the place. It was inconsistent and it was spotty. To be brutally honest, in the end, I thought that this should have been a much better issue than it was, and it felt that the problem was that everybody was just lazy. X-Men Blue number 10. Now that there's no need to cater to the Secret Empire, this title is actually moving in its own direction again, and that's a good thing. Danger and Polaris have effectively joined the team as quote-unquote senior advisors, which is pretty cool, I think, because I love those two characters. There are still, however, some definitive problems. First, some of the characterization, Polaris, Magneto, Scott, and Jean, feels kind of off. Just a little. It feels a little weird. Also, Valletta's art seems to have dropped in quality from last issue to this one. He seems to be having trouble making each character look distinct from one another. I mean, Beast and Danger have unique looks, but everybody else looks interchangeable. Once again, it feels like this title is not living up to its potential. The 4-star books. Now we're getting to the good stuff. These are the comics we can actually recommend. Black Panther number 17. I'm going to go out on a limb here, given the recent uptick in the quality of Ta-Nehisi Coates' writing. I previously thought that he was basically poisoning everything by turning it into all a political tract, but he has stepped out of his own way and he's figured out how to write an exciting comic book. In this case, what he's written is basically a love letter to Storm. Now, Storm has always been one of my favorite characters, but I have to admit, I personally think she more belongs in the context of the X-Men than she does in Black Panther. However, that doesn't matter here. This is a really well-written book, and in addition to the writing, it's also artistically beautiful. Chris Sprouse's pencils combined with the inks of Vines and Story and the colors of Martin and Crossley, they just bolster the entire aesthetic of this issue. There were some small imperfections, mostly with plotting, but it was still overall an amazingly enjoyable book. The Black Racer and Shiloh Norman Special Number 1. Like I said in my much longer look at this single issue, this is a great introduction to two of Jack Kirby's more obscure Fourth World characters. The story itself is fun, it's fast-paced, and it's action-packed. The art fits the story like a glove, and after a second and third reading, I discovered that I wanted this to be the first issue of an ongoing series. There was the unnecessary political commentary involving the thinly disguised Donald Trump clone, but again, as I said in my longer look, that's easily overlooked. This is a fun issue. Deadpool number 35. You guys all know by now how tired I am of the Deadpool character in general. I've pretty much reached the point where I was giving up on everything that had Deadpool in it because everything had been horrible. And then this issue comes along and, what a turnaround. Despite the fact that we've seen a lot of the same notes that we get here before, there is a sense of finality in it this time that hasn't been there. I mean, maybe it's because Secret Empire is over and the writers can now actually go back to telling their own stories. I honestly felt some sympathy for Deadpool in this one. I mean, here's a guy who realizes that he's been duped and he wants to make up for what he's done, but he isn't going to be allowed to do it. And thus he has to deal with every single wrong that he's committed because he was an idiot and didn't spot the bad guy fast enough. It's actually a very effective and powerful story, and I want to see what the next step is. This week, none of the comics I reviewed received a 5-star rating. And now for the points roundup. For DC Comics, there was 1 2-star book, 1 3-star book, and 1 4-star book, for a grand total of 9 points. Obviously, I only reviewed 3 titles, which means the average score was 3.0 points. Marvel Comics, on the other hand, had 3 1-star books, 2 2-star books, 3 3-star books, and 2 4-star books, for a grand total of 26 points. I reviewed 10 titles, for an average score of 2.6 points. Which means that despite only releasing 3 of my titles this week, DC Comics takes the review. Congratulations to DC. But folks, what did you think about these comics? Was I right? Was I wrong? Was I, just completely full of it? Tell me why you think so in the comments below. If you like this video and you want to see more of them, click like and subscribe and the little notification bell in the corner so you don't miss any of our future videos. And if you feel like helping out, we've got a Patreon page and a VidMe page set up, and there are links below. Feel free to wander over and drop $1 in the till. But even if you don't do that, thanks for taking the time out to watch. We do appreciate it, and we hope to catch you next time. Thank you very, very much for watching.